who's standing?
Thank you, sir. May I just say that my learned friend, Mr. Pitter, King's Counsel, appears today to give legal assistance to our next witness, Sergeant Thompson.
Right. If you could take this, please.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Please have a seat.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Moss.
Thank you. So just start by giving us your full name, if you would.
Yeah, my name is Sergeant Carmen Thompson.
Thank you. Can we have on screen, please, CTPNW 30180. And can you just confirm for us, Sergeant Thompson, please, that this is your statement to this inquiry dated the 27th of August of this year?
Yes, that's correct.
And are the contents of that statement true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, they are.
I will be taking you to some aspects of that statement, but not all, and you will understand that that statement stands as part of your evidence and will be published. And can we also have on screen, please, an earlier statement that you have given in relation to these matters? That's CTPNW 30148. And can you just confirm for us, Sergeant Thompson, that this is a statement that you gave to the police who were investigating the attack, a statement that you gave, I think, on the 24th of December 2024?
Yes, that's correct.
And when you gave that statement, we can see at the top that you signed it with the standard declaration for this type of MG11 statement, attesting that it was true to the best of your knowledge and belief.
Yes, I did.
Thank you. You tell us in your statement that that first account that you gave to the police was accurate and gave a factual chronology of involvement. Is that right?
Yes.
But you also tell us that you felt pressured in the sense of time to submit the statement due to the demands of your role and the fact that, as we see from the date of it, that it was coming just up to Christmas. You gave it on Christmas Eve, I think.
Yeah.
And would you invite the chair just to take some account of that in terms of the content of that first police statement?
Yeah, so I was asked by an officer that was investigating that incident just to provide a statement outlining my involvement with AR. I didn't understand how much detail they wanted, and I had little guidance. I just felt pressured to get this information in. So I provided details of my involvement as I could recall, and referring to the PCM tracker.
Understand. Tell us a little bit then about your background. I think you joined Lancashire Constabulary, was it back in October 2016? Yeah.
I joined as part of the early action intake, which was working to prevent vulnerable people being drawn into criminalisation. From then, I went into my role in Prevent as...
Well, we'll come on to Prevent.
Yep.
In the early action team that I think you're involved in, just give us a little bit more detail about that. Just give us a sense of what you would be doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, a lot of my work would be working with young children who were at risk of committing criminality and required multi-agency approach and support to provide them with the support so that they didn't get involved in criminality. And this work would be long-term, working with families and young people in the main.
So when you came on to your Prevent role, which is obviously why you're giving your evidence here today, but you'd already had some experience in policing with children in particular?
Yes.
Would that be right? Did you have some experience of dealing with children with mental health diagnoses?
I did, and prior to joining the police, I worked in a role with the Department for Work and Pensions, where I worked on what was then called the Troubled Families Programme, again working closely with other agencies.
Thank you. And did you feel that that background experience, both in the police and in your earlier career with the Department for Work and Pensions, was helpful in your prevent work, in particular when you were dealing with children?
I do, yes, definitely.
And then, as you set out in your statement, Sergeant Thompson, I think it was right at the end of 2018, I think you give the date actually of the 31st of December 2018, that you started in the prevent role, is that right?
Around that date, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So you've been, by the time of the first referral of AR, which we'll come on to, you'd been an officer, I think, for about 3 years in total, and you'd had about a year's experience in prevent.
Yeah.
It's not a criticism of you at all, but just so that we are establishing the factual position, should we understand it that before your prevent role, you hadn't had any experience in counter-terrorism or intelligence roles?
I'd had some experience in relation to when I served as a special constable, assisting with the Operation Protector, but limited, but some involvement.
Some involvement. How long were you a special constable for?
4 years.
Thank you. And then, so that we have the picture, is it right that you left your prevent role in July 2021 upon gaining your promotion to sergeant?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So if we just bring up on screen, please, CTPNW 180 at page 2, your statement. We look at paragraph 7. We see that you explain that your role was as a counter-terrorism case officer, CTCO. Is that right?
Yes.
I think it can colloquially go as several other names. Prevent officer, I think, is one of them that's sometimes used. Is that right? But is CTCO the correct terminology?
Yes.
And your day-to-day role, is this right, in high-level summary, would be dealing with the referrals that came into the prevent programme in circumstances where those referrals would have been raising concerns about individuals and whether they may be at risk of being drawn into terrorism or involved in terrorism.
Yes.
You tell us, is it right, that the majority of referrals came from schools and related to children?
They did, yes.
So we'll come on to the circumstances of AR, but the fact that AR, when first referred, was a young teenager, that was not of itself unusual at all.
It wasn't. I dealt with a lot of referrals in particular from schools of children around that age.
I think you tell us in paragraph 8 again, so that we have a feel for it, that there were a total of 7 PCs in your department doing a similar role?
Yeah, to my recollection, yeah.
And I think 2 further PCs based in Cumbria?
Yes.
And all of those officers taken together would be dealing with day-to-day referrals, save for one officer who dealt with the Channel dovetail cases, is that right?
Yeah.
And then above you, as it were, there were 2 sergeants based in Lancashire?
Yes.
And 1 inspector with oversight of the team of 9 PCs in total, is that right?
It is, yeah.
And you'd have a weekly meeting, I think, with your sergeant to review your caseload, daily discussions with supervisors as issues arose, yes?
Yes.
If we go over the page, please, to paragraph 11, Sergeant Thompson, very helpfully, you have looked at your various records and set out your training for us in some detail. We see that in May of 2019, you did the Police Gateway assessment, is that right? And dynamic investigation framework, the DIF training.
Yes.
You tell us in your statement that in your training as a whole, you had a concern, if I understood this correctly, that you had a relative lack of access to more experienced officers doing your role from whom you could learn.
Yes, that's correct.
And you give some detail of this in your statement, but what I've understood from it is that you were paired with another constable who, like you, was learning the job and fairly newly appointed.
Yes.
There may have been reasons for that in terms of how things were split up geographically, but did it mean, putting it bluntly, that you didn't have that more experienced mentor type person doing the same job able to show you the ropes from experience?
I feel it would have been more beneficial to my learning to have been paired up with someone with more experience. I did raise this as a concern, and I did get the opportunity to work alongside others when it could be accommodated who had that experience. But I feel that it would have been better for me to have been put and been mentored by someone with that experience, not someone as new in the role as myself.
All right. As I'm sure you understand just from usual life experience, sometimes when these sort of things are raised, it's something that the person never raised during their training. But what you're telling the inquiry is you did raise that.
Yes.
And there was some response in that where practicable, you did get some exposure, but you still would have benefited from having more.
Yes.
Is that a fair summary?
It is, yes.
Another aspect, if we look at your paragraph 11 on page 3, please, is the Prevent Foundation course is something that you did from the 16th to the 20th of October 2019, roughly speaking about 10 months, I think, into your work. Yes?
Yes.
I think the policy expectation was that that would be done within 6 months.
Yes.
To the outside observer, it might be thought surprising and concerning that the course that is described as the foundation course is something that you only did 10 months in. Just give us the thumbnail sketch of what the foundation course covered.
It was an introduction into the whole of sort of counter-terrorism, and I can't remember the exact details due to how long ago it was. I do think it would have been beneficial to have had it at the start, but the reason for that was because of getting people places and current workload, etc. I can't remember the exact details of what it involved.
I won't seek to press you on the fine detail. Can you help with this in outline? When you did that course, did you feel that it was teaching you new things that you hadn't picked up in your 10 months of practical experience doing the job? Or was it the case that by the time you did the course, you'd learnt most of that from doing the job?
A lot of the things were reinforcing what I was already doing, but I also did learn new things in relation to like the assessment frameworks that we were working at and the meaning and understanding of those.
Thank you. You explain in paragraph 15 of your statement that the work as a CTCO was demanding, a high workload at times that varied in complexity. when you were dealing with police-led cases, and we'll come on to some of this in due course, you say you would have sole responsibility for the management of the case and involvement and coordination of other agencies, in addition to the management of risk and safeguarding. So you had a number of those cases on your books, as well as looking at referrals, no doubt?
Yes.
The demanding and important nature of it, the chair is well familiar with.
Yes.
It's always difficult to self-analyse this, but if you can think back to the stage of the first referral, so December 2019, at that stage, how equipped to perform your role did you feel? How confident did you feel in your role?
I felt confident. I felt I had experience in the role and experience that I brought with me through other policing roles and, as I explained earlier, my previous work of experience of working with vulnerable children. I did think that, as with any sort of role, experience comes with doing the role and with time. So working in this role was complex, and I think as time went on and the different experiences you had in managing caseloads and these particular referrals, obviously you become more experienced with that. So I felt I had the experience, but I feel that it is continuously improving and you're learning as you go along and as you deal with different cases.
You've explained about the PC pairing and how you got some exposure to more experience, but it could have been more. Can I ask you about the relationship with the supervising sergeants? And again, I appreciate it. It's difficult sometimes to talk candidly about these things, but may I invite you to do so? Did you feel that you had appropriate support from the sergeants? If you had tricky cases, were you able to go to the supervising sergeant and say, not quite sure on this one, Sergeant, what do you think?
The working relationship I had with the sergeants and the rest of the team, we were quite a small team, and because of the nature of the work that we did, we would all have, not just with supervision, but peer-to-peer as well. We'd have regular discussions throughout the day, every day, continuously discussing ongoing cases, as you always found that you could draw on other people's experiences, so there may have been something that I was not quite sure about that somebody else may have had experience of and could offer guidance. But those conversations happened throughout the working day.
Thank you. Can we turn then to the process involved in a prevent referral? And could we just have on screen, please, Home Office, so that's HOM 4078. So Sergeant Thompson, don't worry too much about where this is coming from, but just as a courtesy, I'm just showing you that this is from the Home Office corporate witness, Catherine Elsmore, from whom we'll be hearing evidence. But if we can go to page 98, which I think is her Annex A, please. And can the totality of the flow diagram please be enlarged a little, Sarah? This is a diagrammatic of the prevent referral process. And just to look at some of the stages, do we see that first of all, when a referral is made, there is a process of counter-terrorism intelligence assessment and deconfliction, yes?
Yes.
And so the deconfliction we perhaps don't need to go into in detail at all, but that would be a check to make sure that it is not duplicating or treading on the toes of other investigations, put very simply.
Yes.
And the counter-terrorism intelligence assessment, I think, reflects the work of the FIMU, intelligence assessment that will be done by that unit, about which we heard evidence yesterday, yes?
Yes.
And in short, they would check the referral against a range of police records and consider whether the referral ought to lead to a counter-terrorism investigation or be considered by Prevent. Again, in simple terms, is that a fair summary?
Yes.
And for a first referral, in this counter-terrorism area, there was the additional assessment that was done by the Joint Assessment Team, the JAD.
Yes.
Were you aware of that as a process?
Yes.
And then it comes, as we see here, to the police gateway assessment for consideration for that. And again, in very simple terms, that is where you would principally come in as the CTCO in the early stages to carry out that assessment. Would you agree?
I would, yes.
And that involves considering the referral against a number of criteria, so looking at what the needs of the person being referred are, grievances, engagement, ideology, and so on, yes?
Yes.
But so that we have it, ultimately, what you're looking to assess is the test of whether there are reasonable grounds to suspect that a person is susceptible to becoming a terrorist or supporting terrorism.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you. And if we can take that from the screen and pick things up in your statement, please. So, Counterterrorism Northwest 180, at page 5, please. Thank you. In paragraph 20, so you explain there that ordinarily the police gateway assessment should be completed within 5 days.
Yeah.
But as we may see in the first referral for AR, there would be some cases where that might need to be longer if there was a need to obtain more information or to take some further steps.
Yes.
And so you wouldn't have seen going over 5 days, in some cases maybe going over 5 days by a reasonable amount as inappropriate if it was taking forward information gathering that was appropriate in order to inform the police gateway assessment. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
Thank you. It would involve, as you set out, liaising potentially with the person who's made the referral, and you can liaise direct yourself with partner agencies, yes?
Yes.
And I think that although you are now working in the counter-terrorism sphere, you are the type of officer in this role as a CTCO who could go into a meeting or have emails with other agencies and be overt in the sense that you would explain that you're a Prevent police officer involved in looking at terrorism concerns. That's something that you could say to other agencies?
Yes.
And you could also, as we'll go on to see in AR's case, you could present yourself in that overt way to the person being referred and to their family.
I could, yes.
And ultimately, as you helpfully set out at the end of your paragraph 20, in completing the police gateway assessment, you're really looking to then decide one of three outcomes, and that is whether it should lead to a police-led process, whether it should move towards channel/dovetail, or whether it should be marked for closure.
Yes.
In relation to closure, I don't think you had the authority to actually complete the closure. That would be something that would need to be signed off. You would recommend it if you thought it appropriate, but it would need to be signed off by your sergeant.
Yes, that's correct.
And your assessment in the PGA, more generally, whether it was police-led recommendation to go towards a channel panel or marked for closure, whichever of those three it is, I think would be subject to a check and an assessment by your sergeant.
It would, yes.
If it was going to be allocated towards the channel process, I think it would then be referred to a channel coordinator for further information gathering.
Yes.
The position in the Northwest, I think, is somewhat different to the nationwide position because of this dovetail pilot, which was ongoing. I think that meant that if it was a channel case, the management responsibilities for a channel case would ordinarily be taken on in most cases by the local authority rather than by the police.
Yes.
But there would be a subset of those cases where if there were particular concerns or sensitivities that meant that it was inappropriate for the local authority to be managing the process, that it could still be managed by the police.
Yes.
And in that sort of case that's being put towards the channel process, after the information gathering, there would then be a further process where decisions are made as to whether to refer the case on for formal discussion by a channel panel. Is that right?
Yes.
And in turn, whether it should be adopted by the panel. And if it was adopted by the panel, then it would be they who would decide upon a package of support to help the person move away from their harmful activity. Yes?
Yes.
And in those sort of cases, as you outlined to us at the beginning, you wouldn't then be involved or wouldn't be significantly involved in that sort of a case because the management of it would be being done by the local authority and by other agencies.
I would still be involved, though, attending the meetings, etc. I would be involved, but it would be led by the local authority.
Whereas if a case is police-led, you might have a more direct role in taking forward the management and leading actions on it yourself. Thank you. And I think another difference in police-led cases is that in police-led cases, it would be for someone in your role, the CTCO, to complete what we've heard referred to, the DIF, the Dynamic Investigation Framework. Is that right?
Yes.
Just tell us what that actually means. Lots of acronyms. Just tell us what the reality of the Dynamic Investigation Framework is. What's that seeking to do?
That would be a further assessment to address any sort of risk or vulnerabilities, identify any areas where further support mechanisms may need to be implemented and highlight any issues that need to be addressed.
Thank you. Is it, in my layperson's terms, moving a little bit on from the assessment of whether they meet the threshold to an assessment of the sort of actions and interventions that need to be taken? Yeah,
and looking to gain more information as well to progress it.
Thank you. Sergeant Thompson, as you will know from your experience, we could spend a lot of time this morning looking at a lot of policies, all right? And what I want to do on policies is just pick out a few of the key ones and looking at some that are more particular to potentially to AR's case. Could we just have on screen briefly, please, CTPNW, so Counter-Terrorism Police Northwest, 30169. Again, I'm just showing you so that you know what this is. This is the witness statement of Detective Chief Superintendent Kenwright. Do you see that there? Just in terms of who the statement is from. Yes. And then at page 10, we see, starting at 3.3, in addition to policies and guidance that DCS Kenwright has already referred to, there's then a list of policies that's given, and see the first one helpfully being flagged. If we just go over the page. We get a sense of the level of policy that was in place and guidance that was in place in this area. And that's in addition to those mentioned earlier. So there's a lot of this material.
Yes.
Did you feel that at the time?
Yes.
Could we look at the policy for prevent practitioners, please, which is CTPHQ 30116? Thank you. So just get your bearings on this document, may be familiar. What I'm showing you, Sergeant, is the version 2.1 from June 2018. Do you see that there?
I can, yes.
Thank you. And then if we go through to page 8, please. Do we see there that one of the things that this is doing is setting out the role of your post, the CTCO, yes?
Yes.
If we look to page 8, you'll see that if we can just have the section under responsibilities to the bottom of the page enlarged a little. So in terms of training and system access, the counterterrorism policing lead for any individual, institution or ideology under management within Prevent, regardless of whether the case is managed as police-led or multi-agency-led, deals with vetting requirements and what you need to be able to access to. And then under case referrals, creating a PCMT, Prevent Case Management Tracker.
Yes.
Record whenever a referral or potential referral is received, submitting any referrals for counterterrorism, domestic extremism management to the relevant information management unit for assessment and deconfliction, and then police gateway assessment. Upon receipt of a deconflicted referral, applying the police gateway assessment, PGA, to determine the most appropriate management process, police or multi-agency led, or exit from management. Then deals with the intelligence cycle. And if we can just go over the page, please, Sarah. On police, you see at the top of the page, it's also requesting flagging as prevent case on NCIA. And then police-led cases, applying the diff to assess the case, identifying the priority banding, using the completed diff to create a case management plan, undertaking any and all activities, interventions identified within the case management plan as necessary to reduce the counterterrorism, domestic extremism risk and safeguard the subject, review the diff and the CMP as frequently as required, and so on. And that's all if it's passed through the gateway and has become a police-led case, yes?
Yes.
I'm not going to go through multi-agency-led cases, but outcomes and closures, ensuring all police activity has been accurately recorded on the tracker, including the use of activity flags to show specific interventions, ensuring closure of cases only occurs when the vulnerability has been addressed and any risk has been appropriately managed, ensuring the correct closure code is recorded, ensuring any flagging used during the management. Now, again, much of that on outcome and closures, is that dealing with when it's got through the gateway assessment?
Yes.
Thank you. Some of those, though, ensuring the closure of cases only occurs when the vulnerability has been addressed, would that be of general application, do you think? Only close it when appropriate?
Yeah, you would only close when appropriate, and as it says that any sort of vulnerabilities have been addressed, whether that's through another agency and the support is in place.
Thank you. But in general terms, this policy for prevent practitioners, would it be fair to say that that reflects the sort of nature and the role that you've been explaining earlier on in answer to my questions? That's the formal policy that underlies the sort of role that you have?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to turn next, please, to the joint letter of the 25th of June, which came from the Director of Prevent at the Home Office and the National Coordinator for Prevent at the Counter-Terrorism Police. So that's CTPHQ 30134. We can see, can't we, that this is going to all police RPCs, channel panel chairs, local authority prevent coordinators, higher and further education prevent coordinators, prevent education officers, and health prevent coordinators. It starts by saying we write to set out our joint position on managing individuals with unclear, mixed, or unstable ideologies as the National Coordinator of Prevent for Counter-Terrorism Policing and the Director of Prevent in OSCT. Just pausing there, you deal with it in your statement, but do you have a recollection of actually seeing this letter?
I have no recollection of actually physically seeing the letter, but I was aware of it, and I believe that this would have been discussed in our daily team briefings that we had.
Thank you. So, although you don't recall seeing it, you think you were trained in the concepts that, as you know, we're going to have a look at, but
yes.
the actual substance of this you were trained on and was spoken about, even if you didn't see the letter.
Yes.
Thank you. If we look at the last two paragraphs, please, Sarah. In some cases, the ideology is obvious, well embedded, and appears to be the primary factor that is drawing an individual towards supporting or engaging in terrorism act offences. In these circumstances, identifying and challenging that ideology is likely to be an essential part of how you would seek to reduce that individual's vulnerability and the risk posed to themselves and to the public. Do you see that there?
Yeah.
And in order to try to make this perhaps more understandable to the uninitiated, is that really getting that in some cases it might be clear that the ideology of concern is clearly of a, inverted commas, traditional terrorist kind. So, for example, extreme Islamist thinking.
Yes.
The letter goes on, however, for an increasing number of individuals being referred to prevent, ideological drivers can appear mixed, unclear, or unstable. And it gives some figures in relation to that it had gone up from 700 to 2,000 within just a couple of years. Anecdotal evidence suggests that this group commonly present with multiple and complex vulnerabilities, such as criminality, substance misuse, social isolation, poor mental health or emotional health, and so on. Just pausing there, not yet getting on to AR's case, so put that to one side. Is that comment in this letter something that resonates with you? When there wasn't a clear ideology, would you often find that mixed in was criminality, substance misuse, social isolation, poor mental health, emotional health, those sort of factors?
Yes, I would agree with that.
In such cases, it often appears that people are being drawn towards an extremist ideology, group, or cause because it seems to provide them with a solution to the other problems in their lives or an outlet to express problematic and dangerous behaviours that they may have developed. Yes?
Yes.
So, in other words, could we just have that? I'm so sorry, Sarah. In other words, the vulnerability to be drawn into radicalism, radical acts, extremist acts, may not be a clear-cut, traditional type of extremist ideology, such as a form of religious hatred.
Yes.
Over to page 2. Thank you very much, Sarah. And so examples that were being given here, people who may switch from one ideology to another, people who target a perceived other of some kind, whether based on gender or another protected characteristic, but do not otherwise identify with one particular terrorist ideology or cause. So people who are motivated against a perceived group or perceived other people, but not because they themselves subscribe to any particular ideology. Yes?
Yes.
And are obsessed with massacre or extreme or mass violence without specifically targeting a particular group, e.g. high school shootings. Yeah?
Yes.
And was that a concept that you were familiar with?
Yes.
Thank you. And then over to page 3, please, Sarah. It says some individuals seek to support or enact tact offences without a clear understanding of the ideology or cause they're ostensibly supporting. Therefore, individuals whose ideological motivations are unclear, mixed or unstable, but who demonstrate a connection to or personal interest in extremism, terrorism or massacre, should be given the same consideration for support. You see that those words are emboldened in the original, as those whose concerning ideological motivations are more consistent and obvious. Was that something that was explained to you, do you think?
Yeah, I had a understanding of this, I would say.
Thank you. It goes on to say, if we may just have Sarah, please, from this letter may raise to the bottom of the page. So it goes on to explain that it was not seeking to expand the remit of PREVENT, but to provide clarification. And it then explains that in 2017 to 20... I'm just going to pause for a moment. Thank you. 2017 to 2018, 8% of individuals referred to PREVENT due to concerns around Islamist extremism or right-wing extremism ultimately received support from Channel. But the corresponding figure for individuals referred to concerns about mixed, unstable or unclear ideologies was less than 1%. While there are likely to be many reasons for this, as we've seen in recent tragic attacks, the motivations of the terrorists responsible sometimes remain unclear even after the event. So we need to pay due regard to the complex issues in order to better protect the public. And would this be right, that what was there being flagged up is, in blunt terms, you are much more likely, as somebody referred to PREVENT, to get through to have the Channel type of interventions and support if the ideology involved was Islamist extremism or right-wing extremism, and much less likely to do if the type of ideology was mixed or unstable, unclear. Yes?
Yes.
And while the authors were saying, well, there may be reasons for that, would you agree that this was giving a warning that there needs to be a preparedness to put people through the PGA stage and get them through to Channel, even if their motivations, their ideologies are mixed, unstable, or indeed unclear, if they do meet the threshold?
Yes.
And towards the bottom of the page, it's fine as it is, Sarah, when it comes to preventing people being drawn into terrorism, our responsibility is to offer interventions and support to all individuals who are at risk, irrespective of whether that risk is being driven by a true belief in an ideological cause or group, or whether an involvement to either of these is being driven by other vulnerabilities and complex needs. Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. The power of PREVENT lies in tackling vulnerability early to prevent future harm, oversimplifying the assessment of risk to offer support only to those with a very clear or embedded extremist ideology, risks missing opportunities to support those with perhaps less obvious but no less relevant or urgent vulnerabilities. Again, was that familiar to you?
Yes.
And just over the page, please. Experience has shown preventing people being drawn into terrorism can be very challenging, often involving complex individual needs that have no simple or single service answer. I don't suppose you would disagree with that at all.
No, I agree with that, yeah.
And you say that with some feeling, that this is difficult and complex work.
Yes.
Yeah?
Definitely.
We therefore recommend that the content of this letter is discussed with your local contest and/or prevent boards and within your channel panel meetings, and consider the following matters. And you see there advised, don't restrict your preventative work only to individuals associated with the ideologies of formally prescribed organisations, and similar advice. How clearly you said that this was briefed to you and you were trained on it. How clearly do you feel, looking back, this was all explained to you?
I feel it could have been explained in more detail. As I say, I don't recall actually ever seeing this document, but I did have an understanding, but perhaps it could have been explained in a more training sort of formal way, going through everything.
Was it something that was re-emphasised time and again, or was it a single briefing? Can you remember? I don't want you to guess if you can't remember.
I just know that I was aware of this, having dealt with other cases that would have fit into this sort of unclear ideology, that I did go on to refer to channel.
And if they didn't appear to have any fixed ideology, or the ideology was unclear, take that for the moment as read. What were you looking to ascertain that they were actually involved in? What would get them over the line against a background of not having a clear ideology?
I would be looking at, was there anything that I felt was making them at risk of being drawn into terrorism or at risk of radicalisation? But it's difficult to say, because I'd be looking at each case individually, at each set of circumstances.
In terms of being drawn into terrorism or risk of radicalisation, did you, for example, have a clear understanding that acts of mass casualty events at schools, say school shootings, and acts of extreme violence could themselves amount to, for prevent purposes, being sufficient?
Yes.
Yes? Was there any confusion in your mind about that at all, or was that something that you think was clear?
As I've just referred to, I feel that I understood that, having dealt with someone with the school massacre interests and ideology, who I referred for channel support.
Thank you. So you'd had a particular case where you'd had to look at this?
Yes.
Not ARs, but you'd had prior experience?
Yes.
Thank you. That can be taken down. Thank you, Sarah. And can we turn next to CTPHQ 4040? Again, Sergeant Thompson, just so you can get your bearings, do you see that we're looking at the DIF framework now, and this is the version 3.3 in 2019. Do you see that there, just so you've got your bearings of what we're going to look at briefly?
Yes.
And then if we can turn to page 5, please, Sarah. Thank you. In terms of grievance narratives, thank you. We see under 1A that personal grievances are deemed to include victims of hate incidents or other direct bigotry around protected characteristics, acute personal anger towards authorities over an issue, perhaps they feel ignored over something they deem vitally important, family or friends directly affected by armed conflicts, seeking personal redemption or revenge, acutely personal feelings of social, political, or religious alienation, marginalization, or discrimination. So those would all come within one type of grievance narrative that would need to be addressed in the diff.
Yes.
A little bit further down the page there, I think, we'll see ideology. And within ideology, do we see consider and describe the subject's exposure to, interest in, or fixation upon an extremist ideology or causes? Note that subjects don't have to be, inverted commas, true or fanatical believers of such an ideology in order to be vulnerable to it. And 1B, consider fantasies about massacres or mass killings is one of the ideologies that's there identified, yes?
Yes.
And again, you appreciate why I need to go through these, but it's clear from your evidence you say that already that that's something you were aware of and familiar
Yes.
with. And then over the page to page 6, please, Sarah. I, J, and K. If there is no clear extremist ideology around the case, describe any ideas articulated around religious, racial, political, or single-issue causes that would fall into the working definition of extremism. You also have at J, if the subject claims an extremist ideology, does it seem generally consistent, or does it seem conflicted or changeable? Does the subject shift between extremist ideologies, an interest in Nazism 1 month, militant jihadism the next? If so, bear in mind that a conflicted or rapidly shifting interest between different extremist ideologies or movements is still relevant to prevent. And then at K, a concerning fascination in the tactics or terrorism, mass killings or school massacres per se, in the absence of a unifying ideology or narrative reason for this interest, may also be indicative of a subject who requires support through prevent. The context needs to be explored around this interest, as, for example, an obsession like this, combined with multiple acute complex needs or grievances, might be suggestive of a higher risk subject. Explore and explain the circumstances. Now, there's quite a lot in K, but the message that it's giving is that a concerning fascination with other people's acts of terrorism, with mass killings or school massacres, can of itself be indicative of a need of somebody who needs support through prevent, yes?
Yes.
And flagging up that one thing to be concerned about in that area would be that sort of fascination in combination with multiple acute complex needs or grievances.
Yes.
Thank you. And then on page 8, just on intent. Is there anything to suggest that the subject might have the intent to commit or deliberately enable unlawful extremist conduct or tax offences? For example, and then we see at E, has the subject shown a particular fascination, openly or in private, with mass killings, e.g. school massacres or terrorist attacks, or the tactics used in them? This could include an obsession with the attackers, terrorists themselves. Consider the wider context of this fascination in relation to the subject's baseline behaviours, yes?
Yes.
So again, all perhaps dovetailing somewhat together, but flagging up the importance, excuse me, that it doesn't need to be traditional terrorist attacks. Mass killings, school massacres are important, that fascination with them may be enough on its own, yes?
Yes.
And it requires perhaps particular careful consideration of the wider context in which it's occurring in terms of other risk factors and what the subject is behaving like.
Yes.
Presumably including signs of actual criminality acting out,
Yes.
acts of violence.
Yes.
Thank you. That can come down from the screen. I just want to touch briefly on the role of the FIMU, please. In your own statement, you explain at paragraph 17 that the referral would come into the Fixed Intelligence Management Unit. They would initially undertake background checks on the referral, as we've looked at, and the concern form would then be emailed by, was it the Prevent supervisor who would actually then get it and then allocate it through the sergeant? It would come to one of you.
Yes.
You say in paragraph 18 of your statement at page 4 that it is important for the CTCA to have a good working relationship with the FIMU officer, yes?
Yes.
Just in your own words, why is that? It may be obvious.
So, just to keep them updated with any cases that you're working on, in case there could potentially be a heightened risk from information that I may have gained through a visit, say. So I would always feed my results through the computer system, but if I had any sort of concerns, I would maybe have a discussion with an officer. I just had that working relationship with them to keep them updated with progress that I felt maybe I needed to have a discussion around.
Thank you. So they have obviously got to feed the results of the intelligence checks that they do to you, but you also have a role in providing information to them.
Yes.
That may require further intelligence work to be done, in simple terms.
Yes.
Thank you. You say right at the foot of paragraph 18 that it was dependent on who the FIMU officer was as to whether they may seek to offer a view on the likely outcome of the referral. In cases where FIMU did offer an opinion, that would be something taken into consideration by the CTCO. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
You'll remember to be very careful about not using the names
Yes.
of relevant FIMU staff. You know who I speak of when I say Officer B?
I do, yes.
In relation to Officer B, was he somebody who tended to offer an opinion or not?
I would have discussions with him. I wouldn't say he'd offer an opinion as such, would just do the relevant checks and let me know if there was sort of anything I needed to be aware of. I don't recall him giving an opinion.
Again, being careful with the names, please. Did you have any sense of how experienced Officer B was?
My understanding is he was fairly new to the role, just because I think I remember him starting, but I couldn't sort of tell you how long or how experienced he was.
Thank you. In general terms, it's right, isn't it, that the consideration of whether or not you were recommending the case to be taken on in one form or another was your responsibility as the CTCA?
Yes.
Was there any sense in which you personally would defer to views of the FIMU when they were expressed?
I would take into account anything discussed with the FIMU or anything that they provided to me, but that decision as to the next steps would be my assessment on the information that I had available. I would take considerations into account, but the decision would be mine.
Turning away from anything about individual officers working in the FIMU, just looking at the position generally, did you understand that there was a distinction between the assessment that was being done in the FIMU and the assessment that you had to do as a CTCA?
Yes.
How would you describe that difference?
My understanding is the assessment that the FIMU carry out would be looking at other intelligence. Were they known to any other part of counter-terrorism? Were there any flags or any other intelligence held? Were they already known to a different part of counter-terrorism? For example, were they under investigation? They would do all those sort of checks basically to say whether it may need to come to prevent, suitable for prevent, or may need to go to pursue if they were known and there was flags and intel that suggested that it needed to go that way.
Did you appreciate that if the outcome of the work of the FIMU and the assessment that was done by the FIMU was that there were no counter-terrorism or domestic extremism concerns or any limited concerns, that the case might very well still be appropriate for prevent support?
Yeah. My understanding, as I've just explained, is that they were checking that there wasn't any concerns in relation to flags or intelligence that they had, or counter-terrorism or ideologies, domestic extremism. They would then, that was part of their assessment and deconfliction, to say, right, this can come for prevent for your assessment as to what I think should happen next.
Thank you. So if we look at CTPHQ 4042, please. I don't want to be unfair to you, Sergeant Thompson, so let me explain very clearly what it is that I'm showing you. This is Annex B, the Prevent Annex to the National Standards for Intelligence Management, all right? And if we go to page 3, please. What I want to be very clear about is that this document itself, or at least this part of it, is describing the role of the FIMU within Prevent, all right? So this isn't your part of the team. But we see there that the different RADOs are talked about, and that was explained yesterday. We see RADO 6 outcome, no CTE, DE relevance. Do you see that there?
Yeah.
And then if we could have, Sarah, please, the whole of that section 4 enlarged, so that from the heading to the bottom of the page. So it's really, taken to the central paragraph, it's really this. In many cases, a partner will refer an individual to the police with the intention it is received by Prevent. This may be on a referral form which specifically mentions Prevent, or Prevent may be mentioned within the wording of the referral. In such cases, unless the intelligence reaches the threshold for a priority investigation, IHM lead, police investigation, or intelligence development, that's pausing there, that's all the cases that wouldn't be taken on by Prevent because there needs to be pursue type activity, yes?
Yes.
The local Prevent team should be made aware, even if the IMU assessment results in a RADO 6 outcome. IMU should be aware that local Prevent teams may consider cases assessed as RADO 6 under the IMU assessment as CTD relevant for the purposes of prevent, and such cases may still be managed with that team. In such cases, there will still be intelligence submitted back into the IMU as part of the prevent intelligence cycle during case management. And that reflects, doesn't it, that the IMU might say, be as stark as to say there is no counter-terrorism domestic extremism relevance to this referral, my words, at all. But it can still be appropriate to take on as a prevent case.
Yes.
And I asked you about this before showing you the document, precisely to explore with you your familiarity with this, but I think it's evident that this is a concept that you would accept could apply.
Yes.
Does it follow that if the FIMU were saying no counter-terrorism domestic extremism as their assessment, you still needed to be very careful to make an analysis of whether the case met the threshold to be put forward to channel or as a police-led case?
Yes.
Thank you. Can we turn then to the first prevent referral? You were the CTCO for all three referrals as it happened, yes?
I was, yeah.
I say as it happened. Would that in fact, do you know, have been deliberate? That having done the first referral, you would have been chosen by the sergeant to do the second and third referrals, or is it just coincidence?
No, that would have been deliberate, whether it's the sergeant that's picked up on it or I may have picked up on that saying I've dealt with this person before, because that would make more sense to me that I've got previous knowledge of the previous referral and I would be best placed to deal with the subsequent referrals for consistency really, and that knowledge and contact with other partners.
Thank you. We'll come back to that later on in the context of the second and the third referrals, but thank you. So in your statement, you explained that the first referral regarding AR was initially allocated to your colleague, PC Davis, Russ Davis, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
On the 17th of December. But I think you'd become aware of it earlier on because you'd been in communication with PC Harrison, yes?
Yes.
We've heard about it in evidence, who was part of the community safety team in Ormskirk.
Yes, that's correct.
You kept a day book. The inquiry is aware that you made quite careful and meticulous notes. You've disclosed a lot of material and it's helpful and we thank you for it. From your day book, sir, just for your note, CTPNW 30157, pages 4 and 6. I don't think we need to bring them up. But it looks from those as though there may have been more than one telephone call with PC Harrison. Do you remember having conversations with PC Harrison? I
don't remember. I do remember that he spoke to a colleague of mine in Prevent initially as he was asking for some advice. I may have spoke to him. I don't recall that. I can't remember.
Yeah. We can see from the chronology of events that on the 10th of December, you actually sent some emails chasing up the referral. So for your note, CTPNW 30363, again, I don't think it's necessary to have them up. But was that prompted by PC Harrison asking for what was going on and what the progress was?
It will have been, whether he's spoken to me or my colleague. Like I say, I can't recall, but I do remember chasing up that referral because we would have usually have received it by then, which is why I think I emailed my sergeant to say, have we had this referral?
Thank you. Let's pick it up then, if we may, at Lanc 30, so LANC 30, 175. At page 77. page 77, please. Thank you. So if we can look at the top email first, ignore the dates at the top, but we see, don't we, on the 11th of December, PC Harrison was emailing you, "Hi Carmen, this is the email that I've sent to the sergeant at custody in Merseyside. I think their version of CPT are dealing, the bit not on there is that he has planned and prepared this by ordering a taxi the day before," so cautioning you about the prior intent, yes?
Yes.
"I believe he has adapted the hockey stick and the knife which were found on him by Merseyside police."
Yes.
And you'll be familiar with the fact that this is the day of the attack, yes?
Yes.
The range school. And then if we go, please, to what he was forwarding on, so the bottom 2/3 of the page, please, Sarah. So this is to Tara, a Merpole custody sergeant, I think. And you see references there to over the last fortnight we were contacted by a child and family wellbeing service. They had a referral from Acorns. The school were reporting very concerning traits and behaviour from AR, been expelled from the range school due to carrying knives, exact details unknown, logging onto websites at school which involve school mass shootings. He also wants to talk about guns and beheading and seems to have a certain hatred of teachers in particular. Do you see that there? Due to our extensive dealings with the aforementioned establishments, this info was gleaned to us, but due to its worrying and potentially serious nature, the school were informed to refer the info to our prevent team, which deal with the potential terrorism offences. Yes?
Yes.
So just go down to the penultimate paragraph. For your attention and assistance in ensuring that you have the full knowledge of the individual in your care, and that the investigating officers have a full picture of the circumstances and his alarming and worrying behaviour. Acorn School have informed me that they have had detailed communication with the Formby School and that they have stated that AR went into the school with the sole intention of killing a particular pupil with the hockey stick. And if that didn't work, he would use the knife, but the pupil in question was thankfully not at school today. So just looking at that information in isolation coming to you at the very early stage, would you agree that that was an indication of accumulation of very concerning information?
Yes.
The intent of killing a particular pupil with the hockey stick, using the knife in particular, yes?
Yes.
Against a background of logging on to websites which involve school mass shootings. So if we look next, please, at page 137 in these emails, the way that the emails are formulated, I'm afraid, are somewhat confusing. So I just want to go to this page, page 137, to ascertain the correct date and time. And do you see there, Sergeant Thompson, that this was an email to you and your colleague, PC Davies, from Officer B on the 16th of December at 6:32 in the evening?
Yes.
Yep. If we go to page 135, please. We need to go to 135 effectively for the same email, but to see what it was that was being attached. So if we look at the top of the page, we see, ignore now the date at the top of the page because that's obviously wrong, but we see the email that I showed you a moment ago. So good afternoon, this is in relation to AR, who has been researching school shootings in America and videos. He was arrested in Merseyside as he went to his old school. armed with a knife and hockey stick to assault a pupil, details attached to email. He has admitted the offences and is currently on bail pending CPS advice. And then Officer B said this has been returned, should be from, obviously, from the JAT for a prevent referral to be inputted onto the PCM tracker and referral to channel Dovetail. I'll create the action ASAP, as I've been dealing with the red lead from last week. Do you have any recollection, you deal with it in your statement, but can I ask you, do you have any recollection of direct contact between you and DC Blundell, who was involved in the JAT and doing the assessment?
No, I don't have any recollection. It'd be unusual for me to have any sort of contact directly with the JAT.
Would you have seen the JAT assessment research document yourself, or just the product of it through?
I will have seen it at some point. I can't say when I actually saw it, but I will have had access to that.
You will be careful not to go into detail that's not necessary for our purposes, please. But would you have been aware that the JAT was a joint team of counter-terrorism police officers and MI5 officers?
Yes.
And here, just dealing with what Officer B was saying on the face of this email, the reference to and referral to channel Dovetail, on the plain wording of that appeared to be an indication that the view was that the case should proceed in that way. Would you agree?
That's how it comes across, yes.
Can you remember what you made of that at the time?
I took that into consideration, that as part of my assessment, as I would always consider whether it's appropriate to refer it to channel Dovetail. I just took it into consideration. I didn't view that as something that I had to do as a specific action.
Yes, and I think it would be fair to you to indicate that the policy makes clear that the decision on what recommendation to make is for you as the CTCO.
Yes.
What I'm interested in exploring is how common or how unusual it was for a message to be passed through the FIMU that a joint team of counter-terrorism police and MI5 were indicating that a case might be appropriate for referral to channel Dovetail. Did you get that often as an indication as the views of the JAT?
Yeah, for me, I thought this was unusual because usually I'd have contact with the FIMU, so I'd be expecting some sort of correspondence to come from the FIMU, and that had been advised by the JAT, which I did find unusual, but it didn't affect my decision making or what steps I took next.
You say it didn't affect your decision making. Did you give some weight to that?
I took it into consideration as part of my assessment, yes.
Did you, understanding that it's unusual, did you ask anything about that back to Officer B, or indeed to the counter-terrorism police side of the JAT, to say why are the JAT indicating that this case should proceed to referral to channel Dovetail? Why are they of that view?
I don't recall questioning it, no.
Do you think that's something that you might have done?
I didn't really see any need to question it.
Thank you. If we could go, please, within these emails to page 152. And again, I apologise to you and to others that it's a slightly laborious process, but just to establish, do you see there that it's saying, Carmen and I discussed this with Catherine this morning and so on, and the date of it is the 17th of December 2019, yes?
Yes.
Can we now go to page, having established the correct date and time and what the email is about, can we now go to page 150? All right. Again, ignore now the date at the top, but if we can look at the substance of the email with the correct date in mind. So this is coming from Officer B. I discussed this with Catherine this morning. Issues with NCIA today now resolved. If you need anything further, give me a ring. And then there's an action, JAT assessment for prevent, visit to establish ideology, and consideration for channel dovetail JAT document on NCIA has a running chronology. So again, this was a further indication, would you agree, that although it's talking about consideration here for channel and dovetail, that there was some interest in that direction being communicated based on the JAT assessment?
Yes.
Thank you. If we go down the page, please. It's second two-thirds of the page, please. Could we just have the second two-thirds? So Officer B here, concern form received from school from Jan Lewis, and gives the details there. And we can see at the bottom of the page, high-risk PVP, as AR was the victim of bullying at school and was carrying a knife at school. Parents aware, so you were aware that that was being done on the policing front, yes?
Yes.
And if we go over the page, please. There's also a reference to taking the knife into school and having been visited by officers at home address, yes?
Yes.
And then I think there was the forwarding of the referral form to you along with that.
Yes.
Can we look then at the referral form before we just take our morning break? So CTPN W30154. We see Janet Lewis, the safeguarding lead at the school, the date of it, the 5th of December 2019. That's the cover page. If we go to page 3, please. Could we have the box highlighted, please, the whole of the box, or expanded? So we see in terms of the referral itself, starts off with reference to the exclusion after taking a knife to injure a fellow pupil. AR admitted to bringing a knife to Range School on 10 occasions and the intent to stab someone, but that hadn't been clarified by the Range School. So just pausing there, the frequency with which a knife had been taken into the previous school on the previous occasion was known, yes?
Yes.
And the intent behind it to stab someone was also known.
Yes.
And then in relation to the 15th of November, during ICT, researching school shootings in America, yes?
Yes.
What would that instantly have been saying to you?
I would need to find out why he was doing that, what his reasons were for that, but it would be flagging up as something concerning.
and all of that understanding about potentially something that could, in the right circumstances, be sufficient on its own, even the absence of a clear ideology?
I'd want more information.
Of course. But
to what the context behind that is, yeah.
Of course you'd want further information, but it should start to trigger, should it not, the thinking, is this a fascination with violence?
Yeah,
And
I'd be considering
you need
that.
to be concerned about that and consider it carefully.
Yes.
When I tried to stop and get him to do his work, try to engage in a conversation about the subject, and then had also tried to reinforce that it wasn't appropriate, and a phone call to the parents in relation to that, and then into his mental health difficulties. And then an explanation given for it. There was only copying behaviour of another student. It clicked on a hyperlink to a news story. Those sort of explanations by somebody being referred for potentially innocent explanations, would this be right? You need to view with a degree of appropriate professional scepticism, yes?
Yes.
Because of the risk of disguised compliance.
Yes.
In other words, oh, I did do that, it was dreadful, I'm sorry, it was an accident, when it was perfectly deliberate, yes?
Yes.
And of parents, in a way that may be understandable that parents might do, underplaying the severity of their children's behaviours and conduct.
Yes.
And then on the 29th of November 2019, a separate incident, punching a hand hard, and then makes the comment in the context of setting up a business or promote a business. His business was new to the area. He insisted that this would not be good because people would think he would kill them as they did not know him. Again, as an individual point, perhaps of less significance, but part of potentially a picture.
Yes.
And the 3rd of December, within the art lesson, oil pastels, and it is in the context of colouring in Call of Duty images. I don't overlook that. So I think we've just lost the... so in the context of Call of Duty, why can't we have these? Why can we have these with guns, but we can't look at guns on the internet? And then said, can we have a picture of a severed head then? Yes. Implication being he'd been seeking to look at guns on the internet. Told not to.
Maybe, again, I would need to gain more information around the comments that he's made and his behaviours.
Yeah. If we can go down, please. There's then on the 3rd of December, the incident involving a discussion with a pupil that seemed to indicate that he'd seen a video of people hurting themselves. The drill bit broke off, it could fly off and kill someone. The 4th of December, reference to the emails that have been sent about this. And then further down on the 4th of December, engagement with a teacher involving swearing, referring to people as looking like a retard, and matters of that kind, and arguing the toss with the teacher involved. If we can carry on, please. Then on the 4th of December, a separate incident involving alleging that a teacher was racist, but making inappropriate comments in the context of that. And then over the page, please. I think mainly detailing the communications around that and dealing with PC Harrison. Can we just go to the next page, please? Yeah. So that, I think you'd agree that the referral form. What did you make of that as an initial referral against the background that we've been looking at?
Yeah, when I looked at that referral, obviously things were concerning on reading it, as we've referred to the school shooting. But I felt that I needed to get more information and speak to him to establish actually what was going on, what his thought process was, what his behaviours was like, how he presented himself. So I didn't have enough information to make a full assessment just from that referral.
No, and I'm not suggesting that you would, but in progressing to the next stage, which we'll come on to, of dealing with other agencies and indeed going on to speak to AR, had you already picked up the need to be cautious about over-relying on explanations that he might give?
Yes, I would always take that into consideration and make my decisions not just from speaking to that person or their family. I would gather information from other places, including the school and other agencies, etc.
Thank you. So we're still on the first referral, but would that be an appropriate time? I'm moving to a different aspect of it.
It would. I'll sit again at 5-2. Yes, Mr. Moss.
Thanks, sir. So, Sergeant Thompson, we've reached the stage in the chronology of the strategy meeting that took place on the 17th of December. Just look at how that arose from your perspective. I think you were contacted by Anna Jameson of Lancashire County Council, is that right, who invited you to that meeting?
Yes, that's correct.
There is a reference within an email, so for your note, it's CTPNW 30363 at page 5, but I don't suggest we need to bring it up, that at one stage you were pretty much instructed to go to it by the FIMU. Do you know why that might have been or how that arose?
Sorry, I don't. I just remember receiving the invite, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to link in with other agencies and attend that meeting to get more information. Thank you.
What we do know in terms of your own actions is that you emailed PC Harrison. Can we have on screen, please, Lanc 30109? Just the top half, please. Again, the correct date of this is the 17th of December 2019, obviously not the 14th of May, and it was 7:07 in the morning. And what you were saying is, I will be attending a strategy meeting at 10 a.m. this morning, and AR will be coming to prevent. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
What did you mean by that?
What I meant by that was I will be attending the meeting with a view to doing an assessment as to whether we would consider referring him to Channel.
Yeah.
So my purpose of attending the meeting was to gain a bit more insight into information from the other agencies as well.
Now, it's important that we don't look at this email in isolation, and I'll come on to the meeting itself.
Yeah.
But we've seen perhaps from the flow diagram that I took you to early on this morning that these processes are somewhat complicated. Would you agree within Prevent?
Yes.
And to the uninitiated, not working with Prevent all the time, they could be, would you agree, very confusing?
Yes.
At different stages. Would you agree, appreciating that it's a colleague-to-colleague email, it's not a formal communication, it's not communicating any decision, but would you agree that the language of AR will be coming to prevent was loose on your part?
Yeah, I think that could be understood in different ways, and I probably should have worded it better than that.
Yeah. It goes a little bit further, does it not, than could be interpreted in different ways, because unless you had a detailed understanding of how prevent worked, the natural meaning of coming to prevent for an outsider, even an outside police officer, is really that prevent had taking him on.
Yeah, my meaning was that we were going to do that initial assessment, but
Yes.
I could understand how that may have been misinterpreted.
Yes, but you understand why I challenged you just a little bit when you said it could be interpreted in different ways, that
Yes.
the problem is that the most natural way to interpret it is contrary to what you meant.
Yes.
If we turn to the meeting itself, the formal minutes are at blank 504. So just get your bearings from the front page. We can see the date is given of a referral received on the 12th and the strategy discussion for the 17th. Page 2 gives us the attendees, and we see that police attendees, including DC Murray, as it says there, and yourself. Your badge there is the Police Early Action Team. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
Would you in fact have explained that you were for prevent?
I will have done. I'm assuming that's just an error. Yeah.
And Sergeant Bramall, we see Community Safety Sergeant as well, so far as policing is concerned, yes?
Yeah.
We also see Stephanie Halloran, mental health practitioner, yes?
Yes.
And then there were school representatives as well and others. I'm not going to go through them all. If we go on to the next page, please. Do we see that amongst the information that was being given by DC Murphy was that AR had been arrested and bailed, and that he'd given a prepared statement right at the bottom of the page, which stated that he had no intention, and then we go over the page, to use the knife. Yes?
Yes.
And we also see on this page, page 4, that amongst other information, that he had denied looking up violent acts on the internet in terms of the information that Merseyside police were given, yes?
Yes.
That he was laughing at inappropriate times during the course of the interview,
Yes.
and that his devices had been seized, but that it could take up to 3 months for them to be assessed. Is that right?
Yes.
And then we see in the middle of the page that there's a reference to an update from Steph Halloran, who had interviewed AR when he was in custody. And she was saying that he had claimed that he'd been assaulted by the boy. And he said as a result, he'd intended to kill him and would have done if he'd found him. She advised that he showed no remorse. Yes?
Yes.
And so a simple comparison of that which AR was saying on his interview with Merseyside police from what he'd said in custody to the mental health practitioner would show that he was lying.
Yeah.
it would have been difficult, would you agree, to have a clearer indication than this, that this, despite his young age, was somebody who would lie to diminish the significance of his own involvement if it served his purposes?
Potentially.
Well, isn't the most natural reading of this that he was clever enough to understand that he shouldn't say in a formal interview with the police under caution that he'd intended to kill the boy, but in a healthcare perspective, he was quite ready to say that that had been his real intention.
Yeah.
So my challenge, in a sense, Sergeant Thompson, is this. It's not a potential. He had already shown in the clearest of terms that he would lie to disguise the significance of his actions.
Yeah, I can understand that.
We also see that it's reported that I think AR's father had been somewhat dismissive when contacted about this. And if we can go on, please, to page 6. Right at the bottom, Sergeant, we see your update that you would be completing an assessment regarding AR and considering if a referral to the Channel programme would be appropriate for him. Do you see that there?
Yeah.
And that's why I said that we have to see that earlier email in context. Certainly at the meeting, would it be fair that you were making clear that there was an assessment process that would have to look at whether the programme was appropriate for him?
Yes.
And at least from this minute, it doesn't seem that you gave any specific indication one way or the other about where that would go.
No.
Thank you. If we just go over the page, please. Under the agreed actions consistent with that, I think the second bullet point was prevent team to commence initial assessment. And again, it was clear that there was stages to be gone through by your team. Would you agree?
Yes.
Do you recall there being any confusion at the meeting in terms of what prevent processes were?
No.
Did you need to explain them in terms of the hoops that would be gone through?
I would have explained in general detail, and I would have said that I needed more information and that I intended to go and visit to get that information to decide what the best steps were.
Thank you. And then if we can look, please, at CTPNW 30132, still on this meeting. This is an action result document. Just explain briefly what that is.
Yes, so this is a result document that I would be feeding back as to the outcome of that meeting that I attended. So any sort of information or updates I would put on an action result document and put that on the relevant systems and share it with FIMU.
Thank you. And we'll come on to your day books in a moment. But one thing we shouldn't overlook in passing, that this is quite a detailed note that you were making for internal purposes of the strategy meeting, yes?
Yes.
So in that sense, good record keeping. Page 2, please. Thank you. One of the things that we note within that, you refer to PC Harrison saying that AR was going to use the knife to finish him off and wasn't bothered about a prison sentence, top of the page. Yes?
Yes.
So that's a note of the same meeting, but in fact putting in the starkest of terms an understanding of what his real intention was, and that had been given to a Liam, a PC from Merseyside, but apparently not in the formal interview where he downplayed his intent to a very significant degree. Yes?
Yes.
So there is a further detail, which is why I'm taking to this document, apart from to show how detailed your own notes were. But that's a second occasion where he's let slip to somebody in a less formal context an intent to commit murder while lying to the police under formal interview.
Yes.
In your day book, CTPNW 30157, thank you. Could we go, please, Sarah, to page 7? Thank you very much. Handwriting better than mine, but Tuesday, 17th of December? Yes. Detailing with parading and some matters that are irrelevant. But then 10 o'clock strategy meeting, and you give the venue. If we go over the page to page 8, in part, can we just have the whole page, first of all, please, Sarah? In part, I just want to, and again, in fairness to you, to show that the detailed nature of the notes that you were taking. These look like contemporaneous notes. You took your day book to the meeting?
Yes.
Yeah. Within this page, I think you detail the search of the house, devices seized, laptop and phone, that the CPS want a statement from Acorns in relation to the research that was being done. That would be a reference to internet research?
Yes.
Yeah. And then over the page, again, just looking at some of the detail that you both would have heard at the meeting, but also noted down, we see there, don't we, stated he did intend to kill him. Teachers were chasing him, so assaulted, and then that's the other boy, as he didn't want to get into trouble for nothing.
Yes.
And just in terms of matters that perhaps we'll come on to, looking at grievances, because one understands that one interpretation of this may be, well, this is bullying related. This is somebody who he thinks has bullied him, whether rightly or wrongly, and he has not a grievance against groups of people generally, but against one other boy who's bullying him at school. But did it strike you as particularly concerning that the lad who was actually the victim of the assault of the ABH in the end effectively just happened to be passing and he decided to assault him?
Yes, that's concerning.
And that's not consistent with somebody whose thinking was just a grievance against one boy, targeted violence in that way because he's bullying. That is an indication that something else is going on.
Yes.
There's reference there, I think, to mother hiding the knives as well. If we go on to page 13, we see in the middle of the page, I think it's okay as it is, Sarah, thank you, stated boys picking on him. This was not the case. they were trying to engage. Can you help to understand what that was referring to?
I think all these notes I made when people were giving updates, different agencies were giving information that they had. So I'm assuming that this was information passed on from the school as to AR believed that he was being bullied and being picked on. But my understanding is that the teachers were saying that other pupils were trying to make friends with him, but he was not perceiving it that way.
Yeah. And that too would point, would it not, to accepting that lots of factors need to be looked at, but that would point to, if anything, a more significant risk, because it's not a simple case of somebody who is actually bullying or just two lads in school who have fallen out, whether they're accusing each other of bullying doesn't matter. This is the school saying, but he's not actually being bullied. They're not actually picking on him. These are just people who are trying to engage with him.
Yeah.
And over the page, on page 14, please, again noting the conspicuous detail of your notes. There's also a reference here to AR saying, about a third of the way down, that he won the fight with the boy. No remorse, and presumably that's meant to indicate no empathy either.
Yes.
All concerning in terms of the risks overall.
Yes.
He'd also asked, and it's mentioned in the minutes, there's reference to the Manchester Arena attack and saying that it was a good battle. Yes? Merely mentioning the Manchester Arena might be an interest in current affairs, but the reference towards the bottom of the page to the Manchester Arena attack being a good battle, even without hindsight, is a deeply concerning view for a young teenage boy to hold.
Yeah, my understanding was a lot of the comments that he said were very inappropriate in relation to all sorts of different things, and I attributed that to the way he was presenting with his autism and the issues that he had, like not being able to make eye contact, not sort of understanding emotions, all these sorts of traits that you could associate with autism. So when I spoke to him, and obviously I've got sight of these comments and behaviours, I've put it into the context that it was to do with his autism and his belief that he was being bullied and his frustration with it.
Yeah. Looking at it now, and I'm going to ask you to try not to use hindsight, but just looking at what you knew at the time, would you accept that while that may have been one interpretation of what was going on, there were others? And the others were that, yes, this was a boy with autism, but that actually he had a fascination with violence. He'd shown an intent to kill, and he wasn't particularly troubled if the actual subject of his violence wasn't his original intended victim.
Yeah, I understand that, and I accept that he was violent, he'd been arrested for a violent offence, but for my assessment as to was he meeting the threshold for a referral to Channel, was that violence, I didn't view it as extreme violence in a prevent way, whereas it was, he had like trying to promote grievance or an ideology of any sort. I didn't see that sort of obsession through the decision making and conversations and information that I had at that time. Of course, it's really difficult now with hindsight not to consider that, because we all know what happened on that day.
Yes.
And I'm finding that difficult to do.
Of course. Take your time. And Sergeant Thompson, not a single one of my questions will challenge in any way the good faith of the efforts that you made. I've already referred, and it's part of the reason why I'm going to it, to the detail of your notes and the care that shows that you were taking. And can I reassure you that my principal purpose in asking you these questions, which I appreciate are difficult, is to be forward-looking and to look at what may need to change in the context of you as an officer who on any view may be thought was acting in good faith, doing your best. All right?
Yeah.
So try to see it in that light, difficult though it is. All right?
And I would underline that.
Yes, thank you.
So the question that I want to come on to for Nat is about training. And obviously, you have told the chair that your previous experience of dealing with young people, including those with autism, was beneficial to you.
Yes.
And that in good faith you saw this as traits of autism in terms of these inappropriate comments. Do you think that your training for prevent work had equipped you to see the dangers in cases where young people had a diagnosis of autism or other conditions, but at the same time, their conduct or their interests were genuinely dangerous and couldn't be put aside to, it's a manifestation of autism? Had you had training in being extremely careful about falling into the trap of, it is because he is autistic?
Yeah, it's very complex, and I have dealt with other people with the same sort of challenges in relation to autism and difficulties. And I feel that the information that I had at that time obviously was part of my decision making, but it is very complex to sort of look at that and pick out those things, because I could only go off what was presented to me, what I knew, and the information that I had at that time.
I follow. Did you have support available to you? You said, I've got to go on what I've seen, but did you have support available to you where you could get a view about, I'm thinking that this is because he's autistic, but these comments are really worrying. And these aren't just comments. This is somebody who has gone out and carried out a serious assault and said that his intent was to kill. Did you have a source of support you could go to in saying, I'm thinking that this is likely to be autistic, but I need some help in unpicking that? Was there someone you could go to for expert help and a view?
There would be the Vulnerability Support Hub that you could refer to, and your supervisor and your colleagues. I think as well, when I spoke with AR, I was in company with an officer that had a lot of years of experience of dealing with people in these sort of situations and taking into account disguise compliance and stuff. So I had that officer with me where we both had the discussion around what we were presented with and what we thought were the best next steps to take, and we both felt that it didn't meet the threshold for a prevent referral to Channel.
We'll come on to the Vulnerability Support Hub. In terms of your supervisor, we'll see that the supervisor approved your eventual recommendation to closure. Do you remember discussing this case with your supervisor?
Yes. Every case I would discuss with my supervisor, whether it'd be a weekly review or as I was dealing with it. So any issues or concerns I would have in relation to a person that I was working with, I'd be in regular discussions with my supervisor. And also simple things like my supervisor would have needed to know that I'm going to that meeting, and the reason I'm doing that, which again would prompt conversations.
But looking now, again, doing the difficult exercise of trying to avoid hindsight, when you look again at the mosaic of information that's presented here, what had come in the referral and additional information, like the reference to the Manchester Arena attack as being a good battle, there was a wealth of highly concerning information, yes?
Yes.
And against the indication that we've seen about the JAT through Officer B expressing a view that this might be appropriate, my words, not the exact quote, to go forward to Channel Dovetail, was any consideration given to referring AR to Channel at this stage after this meeting without a visit?
I didn't feel that I had the information I needed to make that decision. It was always going to be a consideration as to whether it would be referred to Channel, but at that meeting I didn't have enough information, I didn't feel.
We've seen that the Channel process itself involves an information gathering stage.
Yes.
I'm not challenging for a moment, Sergeant Thompson, the sincerity of your assessment that you wanted more information, and one can see why that might be the case and the importance of speaking to AR. But did it occur to you to put the case to Channel for them to obtain that further information, given the gravity of what was being set out?
I had a discussion with my supervisor as to my feelings around what I thought should happen next, and it was that I didn't feel that I had enough information to refer it to Channel at that time, and then my supervisor advised that I should visit the AR, which then she said to put it into what we call police-led, so that I could
and we'll look at that, the police-led aspect. All right. Can I turn to a different aspect now, which is the school internet browsing history? And Officer B was asked about this yesterday, so I can take it with you a little bit more briefly. But were you ever aware yourself of the results of the internet browsing history information from the school?
I wasn't, no.
Were you aware that that had been requested?
Yes. So at the meeting that I attended, the STRAP meeting on the 17th of December, I was advised by Merseyside Police that they had seized devices and sent those off to be examined, and that the school had been asked to provide any information on the searches.
So that's devices seized and sent those off to be examined. but the school had also been asked to provide information on searches of school computers, yes?
Yes.
And did you ever get that information?
No.
From the information that the inquiry has been able to obtain and sampling of that information, what it would have shown is AR searching for and obtaining imageries of a significant number of what I think can fairly be summarized as gory and very unpleasant degloving injuries. There's also repeated searching for glue guns, so not firearms, but glue guns. The interest in degloving injuries, would that have been relevant?
That's information alongside the other information that we have. Then if I'd have seen that, I would think that raises the level of concern significantly.
Significantly, yeah.
Yes.
And would that be right for two reasons? The first is that it is consistent with a fascination with unpleasant injury, yes?
Yes.
And the second is that if there had previously been any doubt about it, it would have given the lie to AR's account that he wasn't doing anything untoward on school computers, and that when some things had shown up, it was just an accident or he was just following a link. Yes?
Yes.
Do you know, it's very difficult to say, and if you don't feel you can answer this question, yes or no, you should say so. I'm seeking your best evidence. But are you able to say whether that information would have led to a different outcome in terms of your recommendation?
I believe that if I'd have seen that search history, as you've just explained, then I would have referred it to Channel.
As a process, does that not therefore lead to a significant concern that the referral was closed off without that information having been obtained?
It does now, knowing what's come back on that search history, and I've reflected on this because my understanding is that the officer would update me with anything that came back from that, but I do appreciate that it would be a better practice for me to have made enquiries as to if that had come back, rather than just leaving it as I've not heard anything, so it must be that nothing of significance has been found.
For the purposes of my questions, I think it's sufficient for me to put it in this way. Between the triangle of the school, FIMU, and yourself as the CTCO, would you accept that that triangle should have ensured that the school internet browser history was considered before the referral was closed?
Yeah, I think we needed to have had sight of that history, definitely.
And a further way in which that would have been relevant would be this, would it not? That knowing that his use of the internet at school had not been the occasional accidental looking at inappropriate material, would have given greater emphasis to what he was doing on the internet at home.
Yes.
And could have led to that being looked at more intensively in terms of giving detailed search terms as to what to look for in the devices that have been seized by Merseyside police.
Yes.
Sergeant Thompson, just so that it's covered, in the tracker, there's a occasion where information relevant to a different case gets put onto the tracker. I think you had another case running at the same time. That was a pure administrative error.
Yes.
There was no sense of actually any confusion between the two cases as far as you're concerned.
No, it was just an error of admin.
And so you've mentioned about eventually going to police-led process. And you say in your statement, it's paragraph 29 on page 7, that you took advice from your supervisor. You've mentioned that. You decided to visit AR to get more information, yes?
Yes.
And so the move of AR's referral to police-led process, was that in effect to allow the visit to be conducted to gather more information?
My understanding is I needed to do that visit. I'm not really sure how to explain why it went into police-led. That was what I was advised to do by my supervisor,
Right.
to allow me to visit the subject.
So we shouldn't confuse this police-led process with a case that has got through the PGA and has been taken on by Prevent and referred to the police-led process. This was a police-led process for a slightly different reason.
It was, yes.
For whatever reason, to enable the interview to take place. Is that a
Yes.
fair summary? Is
Yes.
that at least how you understood it?
Yes.
Am I following? Should we understand then that there was not any issue about a reluctance for it to go to Dovetail Channel, which would be led by the local authority? This is a case of concern, we'll keep it with the police. It's nothing like that at all.
No, I felt I needed more information.
Thank you. So although in technical terms, somebody looking at the record might have thought this has got through the assessment because it's now a police-led process, we should understand that that was a bit of a device for whatever technical reason to gather more information.
Yes.
Could we just look briefly against that explanation at CTP NW 30122, please? And can we go in that document, please, to page 32? So this is the Prevent Case Management Tracker for the first referral. We see within this, with a date of the 20th of December 2019, the status is now police-led partnership, so it's actually the one below that I'm interested in for the moment. There is very little information about this case, a Prevent visit to be conducted to carry out a risk assessment and determine the appropriate course of action, thank you, when further information is obtained. Yes?
Yes.
And then the FIMU assessment. There is also the 20th of December, there is very little information about this case, and further information needs to be obtained through a Prevent visit. I don't want to dwell on this for too long, but the reference given twice there to there is very little information about this case, is that not a little odd as an observation, given how much information there was in the initial referral, and then how much information had been recorded from the strategy meeting?
Yeah, perhaps the wording would suggest there's very little information, but actually there is quite a bit of information. I think what I'm trying to say is I haven't got enough information to complete an assessment to establish whether it meets the threshold to be referred to Channel.
One interpretation, one possibility that I'd like to explore with you, if I may, is this, that it might be thought that what there was little information about was the motivation or ideology, and that's what needed to be obtained. We need to look further on ideology.
I would also be considering that when I'm speaking to him, to see if he did sort of display any extreme behaviour or ideology as part of my assessment.
And that might raise a concern that I want to give you the opportunity to deal with, that what was going on here was, we know he said lots of things that are very concerning, but what we don't know if there's any counterterrorism or domestic extremism type ideology here, and that's what we need to find out whether it's happening.
There was a lot of information that I needed to find out. I also was taking into consideration the school massacre ideology. I wanted more information as to the context behind why he'd been looking at specific things that he'd been looking at. And my assessment of that was through an interest in, the media, current affairs, enhanced by his autism.
But you assure us that you were aware that, in a sense, you didn't need to have an underlying fixed ideology motivating this to
Yes.
push the case on to channel intervention.
I understand that, yeah.
And you understood it at the time.
Yes.
You created a case management plan for this. So that's in the tracker. If we look in the same document, please, at page 24. Thank you. If we could just look within that, you set out much of the information, first of all, that was we've seen already in the context of the strategy meeting. But then under complex needs, could we just have that expanded, please, Sarah? So the subject has undiagnosed ASD and mental health issues and may also have special educational needs. He displays ASD traits, and the only emotions he's able to express are sad or angry. He has no understanding or remorse for the consequences of his actions. The subject has expressed that he thinks that there is something wrong with him. He's unable to express himself emotionally or make eye contact. The subject feels resentment towards his brother, and then some information has been redacted on privacy grounds. The subject does not believe that he is really, and then the same again. And then parents don't challenge the subject's behaviour. The school has referred the subject to CAMS, forensic CAMS, and for ASD assessment, a referral to the Vulnerability Hub to be submitted by Prevent. Yes?
Yes.
So just explain, you touched on it earlier, but just explain the Vulnerability Safety Hub.
Yes, so this is referenced on the Dynamic Investigation Framework Assessment as well as a consideration. So this was a hub that you could refer to for advice in relation to mental health issues, and you could have mental health practitioners and psychologists and experts who could give you further advice and information around that person and how to manage their needs and the support that they needed in place.
Now, we can keep this document on the screen for the moment, please, but you deal with the Vulnerability Support Hub and this record that we're looking at in paragraph 31 of your statement. And what you say there is that you must have taken the view that this would potentially have assisted in addressing AR's mental health concerns and his autism diagnosis. Is that right?
Yes.
And you set out that you've referred to it, it's also in the diff. And you say that you had a good relationship with the team at the Vulnerability Support Hub. Is that right?
Yes.
And you said in your statement that you'd like to know whether there's any record of you emailing Sarah Sanderson directly rather than via the central VSH inbox. Just help us to understand who Sarah Sanderson was.
She was one of the people that worked in the vulnerability hub.
In the hub. And I think you'll have been made aware that those email checks have been done
Yes.
at both ends, so for your email and for hers, and they don't show any contact. And taking it shortly, would you accept that it looks like you made an error and an oversight in not in fact taking the onward referral to the VSH forwards?
Yeah, I accept that. I accept that I haven't done that, but it was my intention
It was your
to do
intention
that.
to do it.
But I can't explain why I haven't.
Thank you. Did your supervisor ever pick you up for the fact that the management plan had within it referred to the vulnerability hub, and yet it had never been done, and the case was closed off?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Of course, the Vulnerability Support Hub, as you said in your statement, may have been a source of support and guidance for AR, potentially, or signpost to services that might be able to help, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I was aware that at the time he did have involvement from CAMS,
Yeah.
so they may well have been able to offer other assistance aside that, but he did have involvement from them.
Thank you. But in addition to that, the VSH it is there also in part as a resource for you as a CTCO, is it not, to get input on the psychological side in terms of understanding how mental health diagnosis may be interacting with the subject of the referral?
Yes.
And here, when I asked you about whether you had discussed the case and whether there were people that you could go to get assistance, when your instincts were and your assessment were that it was related to autism, that the Vulnerability Support Hub, I think, was one that you mentioned, yes?
Yes.
And would you accept, therefore, that this was potentially a significant error because you missed the opportunity to get the input of the Vulnerability Support Hub into the assessment of whether this could be attributed to inappropriate comments on the back of autism,
I don't
as
feel...
opposed to that being disentangled from a young man who was fixated with violence, had an intent to kill, and was very dangerous, and was also autistic?
Yeah, I don't feel it was a significant error because, like I explained, he did have the involvement of CAMS and was getting support in relation to his autism, but it would have been useful, I think, as well, because I'd assessed this for closure. I didn't sort of follow that up with the Vulnerability Hub, but I probably should have done.
But one aspect of concern in relation to his involvement with mental health services, as we've seen, is that at the strategy meeting, the mental health practitioner involved in custody was the very person who had said, well, actually, to me, he said he intended to kill the boy. So that wasn't reassuring information coming from the existing mental health services involved with AR, was it?
No, but they were involved and they are the experts in relation to mental health.
On page 25 of this document, under that we've got on screen at the moment, under engagement, so under the heading engagement, if that can be enlarged a little. the subject is vulnerable due to his undiagnosed mental health and ASD. The triggers for his behaviour are not yet understood, and further work needs to be done to establish this. That, again, is something where the Vulnerability Support Hub may have had helpful input to give. Would you agree?
Yes.
Moving on, if we can go back, with apologies for jumping around, to the bottom of the previous page and look at grievances. So just say that what you're being invited to consider is to describe any political, racial, religious, or single-issue grievances, narratives articulated by or associated with the subject and their context. And it's important that I read that out in fairness to you before going to what you put. We go to the top of page 25. If we have that expanded, please. You say there's no evidence of any grievances at this stage. Further information is required to assess this. Was that quite right?
I think when I've re-looked at this, I should have made reference to the bullying, but when I was doing this assessment, I didn't feel that fitted into this assessment. I felt like the bullying was a separate thing and didn't fit into this category of grievance in this context.
But to a significant extent, I've touched on this already, there were already signs that this wasn't a simple falling out between two lads at school involving allegations of bullying, because he seemed to have a hatred for groups of teachers. That's been referred to, yes?
Yeah.
There's the reference, I think, earlier on in the intelligence picture to that's why teachers get murdered when he'd been given a detention. Yes? And then there's the sense in which the information from the school was he's not getting bullied. And these boys are trying to engage with him, and it's his perception of it. So I'm understanding that perhaps the conventional case that grievance is looking at is there a grievance against a religious group or a particular group of identifiable people by some sort of characteristic? On reflection, the simple characterization the other way, there's no evidence of any grievances, just wasn't accurate, was it?
I hadn't understood, the way I understood it and the training that I'd had and the information that I had, I didn't feel that was a grievance as such. I had taken it that he felt he was getting bullied, and the way he was reacting and behaving was a lot to do with his autism. That was my assessment at the time.
Yeah. And would this be an area, do you think, where guidance and training could be improved? Because obviously a one-to-one falling out may just be an issue of criminality and targeting, but is this an area where, looking at it now, you think you underplayed the grievances and this needs to be looked at in terms of training and guidance?
I think, training and guidance is really important and something that should be revisited throughout whatever job that it is that you're doing. So it would be beneficial. I can only explain that is the way that I understood it at the time. Yeah.
Because this is deliberately hindsight, stepping aside from it, and there's no way that you could have known this, and I make that absolutely clear. But as events played out, even before the dreadful attack at the end of July, we know that on the 22nd of July, I think some 3.5 years after this stage, AR had booked a taxi to take him to the range school in circumstances where his father thought he had a knife, presumably to carry out an attack on the range school. So it might be thought from that what the inquiry now knows is that there was an enduring grievance going on with AR. Would you agree?
Yes, from what we know now.
From what we know now.
Yes.
Thank you. You say in paragraph 30 of your statement that you would have been, dealing with this case management plan, you would have been trying to identify any political, racial or religious motive for any grievance in this context, which did not appear to you to be present in this current case. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that consistent with the joint letter that I took you to earlier on? I would have been trying to identify any political, racial or religious motive for any grievances in this context.
Yeah, I think it does relate to personal grievances as well in that letter. But in this context here, I didn't feel that there was anything that related to that. So I have got in mind the letter as well, but that was my understanding in relation to grievances.
Thank you. Can we just go on to page 27, please? We see at the bottom of the page that you marked it as standard priority. Can we just understand what that indicates?
That was just you had to select a priority rating, so that's what I rated it. I can't really go into detail to explain it because it's a long time ago since I've had the dealings with this, so I don't know like the technical term.
I'm just going to give the reference for this for the Chair's note, so it's CTPHQ 30116.
Thank you.
In the policy for prevent practitioners and management of CTD risk within the community, there's a definition of standard priority which says that there needs to be at least one corroborated risk factor identified through the DIF requiring further investigation or intervention. Can you help us with what the one corroborated risk factor was in AR's case that justified the standard priority grading?
It will have been his autism and violence.
And within violence, concern about school massacres?
In relation to his recent arrest.
Thank you. And then if we go on to page 27, please, we can also see that right at the bottom of the page, it's in fact the same page, very last paragraph, prevented to visit the subject to determine if the case would be suitable for referral to Dovetail, officers to determine if there is any CTDE ideology and risk assess any vulnerabilities and safeguarding and put the appropriate support in place. In relation to that, again, one reading of that is that what you felt was the missing piece in terms of appropriateness for accepting AR on to prevent was a counter-terrorism, domestic extremism ideology.
No, that wasn't the case. I think that's something like the terminology we used to use quite a lot when writing things down. But as I've explained before, I was taking into account the school massacre and the things mentioned in the joint letter. I think it's just the way that it reads in that context.
Thank you. You went on then to conduct the visit to AR's home on the 3rd of January? Yes. I think the records show that you'd first visited on the 31st, but AR's father had asked you to come back on a later occasion because of his taxi driver duties, yes?
Yes.
Did that strike you as concerning in itself?
No, because his father worked nights and he was a taxi driver, and that would have been New Year's Eve, so I thought that was a reasonable request because he was trying to get some sleep.
Thank you. You've explained in your statement, again, perhaps consistent with the characteristics that we've seen from you in your record keeping, that you used a checklist in your notebook to ensure that you'd covered the relevant topics. Is that right?
Yes.
So you put some planning into this meeting?
Yes.
We see in your statement also that when you spoke to AR's father, his reaction was that AR was, quote unquote, a good boy.
Yes.
I don't think you would give particular weight to that as you explain in your statement, because parents would say that.
Yes.
If we can just have on the screen, please, CTPNW 30135. We see that you gave, again, a detailed written record or readout from the visit by way of this formal action result document. Is that right?
Yes.
So you and PC Lawrence, you say that he was experienced.
He was, yeah.
Lawrence, yeah. Visited the subject at the home address. He felt the school had taken things out of context in relation to his behaviour and online activity. When he was asked about researching the internet for school shootings, he stated that he'd seen a news article on Yahoo and he'd clicked onto the article as he was interested in it. He told officers that he had not actively searched for this. Did you believe him?
At the time I did, without taking all the other information into account and the way that he was presenting to me and his behaviour, I did.
The subject then told officers that he had looked on the internet for nunchucks, I think it should be, on the school internet. He said this was research for a lesson where they'd been building things. The nunchucks are a form of martial art weapon.
Yes.
The subject said that he'd explained to the teachers the reasons why he looked at these things on the internet, but they still wrote it down anyway. Said that he felt that they were always writing things down about him to get him into trouble. The subject said that he hated it at school and that he did not like any of the teachers, and he felt as though they were picking on him. When the subject was asked about the recent incident he'd been arrested for, he said he had done this because he was bullied for a number of months. He had told the teachers and they had not done anything about it. The officers asked the subject why he thought he'd been bullied, and he said that he thought that the individual that was bullying him was jealous of him because everyone at his previous school liked him. You say in your statement, in broad terms, paragraph 39, that you say that it seemed a credible explanation that he hadn't actively searched for information regarding school shootings, and you were happy that inquiries were going to establish whether this was the case or not.
Yes, I'm referring to the searches on his devices and from school and the checks that I believed in that were in place at school in relation to firewalls and alerts if he did go on anything that was of concern. A lot of the stuff that he referred to was looking at current news and looking at links that were already there, not actually, from my knowledge and the information that I had, searching, extreme things or anything like that. It was just, to me, an interest in the news and things that have been discussed in lessons at school. That's how it was portrayed to me.
Reflecting on things now, only with the state of knowledge that you had at the time, but thinking in particular about what that strategy meeting showed about the way that AR had deliberately downplayed things and lied, yeah? And thinking about the regularity with which the school was raising these concerns of what he was caught looking at and saying he was interested in. So you include within that an interest in the Manchester Arena, as I've raised with you. Why can't we see a severed head, as well as the things that he was caught looking at online? If you piece all of that together, it isn't the reality that with deeper reflection on this at the time, and perhaps with more experience, you would have been much more sceptical about these explanations with AR, the explanations from AR.
I may have been, but I can only tell you what the information that I did have that time. And I think, again, with hindsight, it does make you think differently. But I dealt with other people in the same sort of situation of that age, or presenting at a certain age with certain needs, talking about things that I didn't think that was... The conversations that I had with him didn't leave me feeling really concerned. I was concerned in relation to his use of violence and the issues that he was experiencing in relation to bullying.
And Sergeant Thompson,
it's hard to sort of explain it, sorry.
No, forgive me for interrupting. Sergeant Thompson, again, I don't challenge at all the genuineness of your thought process at the time, and I'm trying to encourage you not to look at it with hindsight, but to reflect on what you did know, and I appreciate that it is difficult, but would you accept that even with the information that you had at the time, you should have been more sceptical about what AR was telling you?
Yes, I look back and think maybe I should have probed things a bit more.
We see in paragraph 6, the subject told officers that he'd previously taken knives into school as he was being bullied. He would not carry knives anymore as he understands that this is wrong. And again, that's a self-serving statement, isn't it?
It is, but the conversation that I had with him, I believed what he was saying to me. The way he came across was as a child that had a lot of complex needs and a lack of support in place to manage his needs.
Thank you. If we go on to page, right at the bottom of the page, please. The subject did not display any extremist views or CTDE ideology during the conversation. He has no interest in politics or religion. He has no interest against specific groups. And before we go over the page, throughout the conversation, the subject displayed traits of autism. Again, against a background of accepting the good faith and genuineness of what you did perceive, but this all speaks to you thinking this is because he has autism, and looking for a terrorist ideology and not seeing one, and thinking therefore he didn't meet the threshold.
I considered the information that I had, yes. I didn't feel that he met the threshold for a referral to Channel.
Did you consider the flip side, that AR's diagnosis of autism might increase the risk?
I did, yeah. I took that into consideration because I have experience of where somebody's autism has made them sort of enhance the research and the vulnerability. I felt that, yes, I was aware that that was a potential factor, but he had the support from the other agencies and the fact that there was going to be a care plan implemented. I felt that at that time that was enough to manage it between the school and mental health.
Because in this case, AR had in fact acted on thoughts in carrying out an actual attack at a school with a weapon which he had deliberately adjusted, the hockey stick, while also carrying a knife.
Yeah.
Why didn't that mean that this was a case where there was a violent young man whose autism might increase the risk, rather than saying, well, it's because it's autistic, other agencies are more appropriate?
I didn't feel that it was for prevent. I felt that, yes, his behaviour was concerning and needed managing, but I felt that that was for the police to manage, not for a prevent referral.
Did you not, in this meeting, think, whenever I ask a question of AR about what his thinking was, he's minimising things?
I took that into consideration, yeah.
And that itself, rather than, well, he didn't seem to share any ideology, I thought it was traits of autism, the fact that he was repeatedly downplaying, minimising the significance of what he'd done, actually serves to increase the risk, because it's someone who is manifestly showing signs of disguised compliance, telling you what you want to hear.
Possibly, but I did take into consideration disguised compliance, and as I've explained, I felt that a lot of this behaviour was because of his autism.
Thank you. I appreciate that I'm still on the first referral. I will be much briefer with the second and third referrals, but I wonder if that might be a convenient moment. Might I ask for 40 minutes today?
Yes, certainly. Given we're pressed for time, I'm afraid we're going to have a shorter lunch break. We'll sit again at 10 to 2.